She hits the floor so hard Jiwoo feels it through the mattress. 1 second, she is beside him. The next, she is gone. And the sound that replaces her, that low, guttural, tearing sound, is already on its feet before he is, already halfway across the room in his mind before his body catches up. He finds her on her back between the bed and the wall, her spine rigid, her heels drumming against the hardwood in a rhythm that has no mercy in it. Both fists knotted in the collar of her own shirt, like she is trying to rip something off her chest that has no physical form. Her eyes are sealed, her mouth is open, and she is screaming his name, not calling for him, screaming it, the way you scream the name of the only person standing between you and something that wants to finish you. Jiwoo, Jiwoo, please, Jiwoo. He drops, both knees, no hesitation, the impact doesn't register. His hands find her face first, both palms, thumbs at her jaw, and he is already talking, his voice low and deliberate and stripped down to its most essential frequency, the voice that lives directly beneath rage and directly above the kind of grief that has no bottom to it. Nora, I'm here, right here. Come back to me. She does not hear him. She is somewhere else entirely, somewhere he cannot follow, somewhere the people who did this to her apparently still have full access to, even at 2 a.m. in a locked apartment with his arms around her. Her body bucks once, hard. He absorbs it without moving. His jaw locks, his eyes stay on her face, and what crosses his expression in that moment is not fear, it is confirmation, cold, devastating confirmation. That whatever is hunting her never stopped, that it followed her home, that somewhere right now the people responsible are sleeping without incident, while the woman he loves screams herself raw on a bedroom floor and cannot find her way back to him. He holds her tighter. He keeps talking. And somewhere underneath the heartbreak, something else is already waking up in him, something that has been patient for a very long time. Subscribe to the Seoul Chronicles if you love cinematic Afro-Korean emotional justice stories where betrayal has consequences and every episode leaves you speechless. Now answer this in the comments. How far across the line of the law would you go if everyone your partner trusted had secretly been paid to destroy her? Tell me your limit, because Jiwoo is about to find his. It starts, as most catastrophic truths do, with a number that doesn't belong. Jiwoo is not a man who stumbles onto things. He is a man who hunts them. 15 years building cybersecurity architecture for intelligence contractors across Seoul, Tokyo, and Singapore had rewired his brain into something that cannot pass an anomaly without pulling the thread. So when Nora first told him, haltingly, in pieces, over 3 separate nights, her voice carefully flattened to keep the trembling out of it, that things at her job felt wrong, felt designed, that her boss seemed to know exactly which words would send her spiraling, that her coworker Yuna seemed to arrive at her lowest moments with a precision that felt less like coincidence and more like choreography. Jiwoo had smiled gently, held her hand, and then gone home and opened his laptop and not closed it for 31 hours. What he finds inside Nora's corporate email server, and he finds it easily, disturbingly easily, which tells him the people who built this didn't think they'd need to hide it from someone like him, is a financial architecture so clean it would look legitimate to anyone who didn't know exactly what the transfer patterns of a psychological contract looked like. But Jiwoo knows. $3,000 US, wired monthly to an account registered under the name of Nora's direct supervisor, a man named Park Sung-hyun, who smiles at Nora every morning and CCs the entire department when she makes even minor errors. Another 2,000, recurring, landing in an account held by a woman named Yuna Choi, Nora's closest office companion, the one she calls when she's overwhelmed, the one whose desk Nora cries at when the bad days crest. The originating account, a private holdings shell linked after 4 layers of corporate camouflage to a man named Kang Dae. The payment memo on every single transfer is the same 2 words: continued services. This is not harassment. This is employment. Nora's torment is someone's job. Jiwoo sits with that knowledge for exactly 6 minutes. He counts. He allows himself 6 minutes of pure, white-hot feeling, the nausea, the rage, the heartbreak, for the woman sleeping in their bedroom who has been blaming herself for months, who has been increasing her therapy sessions, who has been quietly reducing her own confidence, one self-doubt at a time, because the people around her were paid to make sure she did. 6 minutes. Then he closes all feeling behind his eyes, like a vault door swinging shut, and he becomes something else entirely. Something colder. Something that was always underneath the gentleness, waiting for a reason precise enough to justify its emergence. He almost misses the third account entirely. It is routed differently, personal rather than corporate. The transfer is smaller, almost modest by comparison, and his first instinct is that it belongs to a peripheral player, someone low in the hierarchy, someone whose role is minor. He almost moves past it. Something makes him stop. Maybe instinct. Maybe the 8 years he spent learning that the quietest account in any financial web is almost always the most important one. The account resolves. The name attached to it resolves. Violet, Nora's older sister, the one who calls every Sunday without fail. The one who was the first person Nora told when she and Jiwoo became serious, "You'll love him, Vi. I think he might actually be it." $800 a month, every month for the past 7, wired into an account registered at an address that is not Violet's home, at a bank Violet has never mentioned. Jiwoo stares at the name for a long time. He cannot make it mean what it appears to mean. Not yet. There are explanations. There are always explanations. A shared venture, a loan repayment, a financial arrangement between sisters that has nothing to do with Kangdae's network. He tells himself this. He pulls every piece of available data on Violet's finances, her communications, her daily routine, and he finds nothing that explains it cleanly, nothing that exonerates her, but nothing yet that confirms the worst reading either. Just the money, just the timing, just the fact that every single transfer lands within 48 hours of one of Nora's worst episodes. He does not tell Nora. He marks it. He keeps moving, but the question burrows into him and will not leave. Violet mails Nora a tea blend every month, has done it for years. Nora brews it every single morning without fail, calls it the one thing that steadies her before she faces the day. Jiwoo has watched her do it 100 times, hands wrapped around the mug, eyes closed, breathing it in like an act of prayer. He had found it beautiful once. Now he finds himself standing in the kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring at the sealed tin on the counter, and something cold is moving up the back of his neck. He bags a sample. He seals it. He sends it to a contact who does not ask questions and does not appear in any directory. Then he opens a different laptop, the one that does not exist on any network he can be traced through. Because there was a reason intelligence contractors paid him more to erase people from systems than to build them. The version of Jiwoo that Nora fell in love with had spent years pretending the other version no longer existed. Tonight, for the first time since leaving that life, he accepted another assignment. The first name on his list is Park Sung-hyun, the man who smiles at Nora every morning. He starts there. Park Sung-hyun loses his career on a Tuesday. Jiwoo does not touch him physically. He does not need to. What Jiwoo does is quieter than violence and considerably more permanent. He threads Park's financial records, his private communications, and 3 years of meticulously concealed misconduct into a single, irrefutable package and delivers it simultaneously to Park's corporate board, his wife's personal email, and the Financial Crimes Division of the Seoul Metropolitan Police at 4:17 in the morning, when there is no PR team alive fast enough to contain it. By 9 a.m. Park Sung-hyun's access badge no longer works. By noon, his wife has changed the locks. Jiwoo watches the notification cascade across his monitor with the expression of a man checking items off a list. Yuna Choi follows. Within 72 hours, her termination routed through the company's own HR system using credentials she had carelessly left exposed. Her private messages to Kang Dae's intermediaries surfacing in the inboxes of everyone she had used Nora's pain to impress. Two tentacles severed. Jiwoo does not feel satisfaction. He feels the particular clarity of a man who has located the correct direction and begun walking. He goes deeper into Kang Dae's history, and what he finds is not a file so much as a graveyard. A factory owner in Busan, 63, whose entire operation Kang Dae dismantled through fabricated debt until the man signed over everything he owned and died 4 months later. A female architect in Incheon who opposed one of his development projects and found herself facing criminal fraud charges so elaborately constructed that she spent 11 months in pre-trial detention before every charge collapsed, by which point her firm was dissolved and her life was unrecognizable. A family who simply owned land Kang Dae wanted and refused to sell it. 8 names, 8 destroyed families. 8 lives reduced to cautionary tales that never made the news because Kang Dae understood exactly how to ruin people in ways that looked like their own failures. And then Jiwoo finds the entry that stops him cold. An elderly woman, 67, a Hanyo diver who had spent her entire life working a small coastal property her family had owned for 4 generations. Kang Dae and his men had visited to formalize what they considered a completed transaction. She refused. They made their position physical, and a young black American woman who had been teaching English at a nearby language institute had been walking past at the wrong moment, had stepped between Kang Dae's men and this elderly woman without hesitating, had recorded everything on her phone and screamed for bystanders until a crowd formed. Until Kang Dae had to retreat publicly for the first time in a decade, had humiliated him on camera in front of witnesses. Her name in Kang Dae's file has one word next to it, in red, priority. Jiwoo sits with this for a long time. Nora had never told him the full origin of it, had described the harassment as something that materialized around her, ambient and sourceless. She had not known it had a beginning this specific. That she was targeted, not randomly, but precisely. That she was chosen because she was good. Because she had stood up for a defenseless woman that no one else stopped for, and a man with unlimited resources had decided she would spend the rest of her life paying for it. Jiwoo closes the file. He allows himself no minutes this time. The laboratory report arrives at 6:40 the following morning. 1 page. Jiwoo reads it standing in the kitchen, still in yesterday's clothes. The language is clinical and unhurried, and what it describes is the presence of anxiety-amplifying alkaloids in concentrations sufficient to produce measurable physiological escalation in a regular user-elevated cortisol, disrupted sleep architecture, heightened panic response, consistent exposure over several months. The kind of findings that explain, with cold scientific precision, why Nora's episodes have been intensifying rather than healing despite everything she has done to get better. Jiwoo sets the report on the counter. He does not move for a moment. From the bedroom, he can hear Nora waking the specific sounds of her morning. The creak of the bed, the soft sound of her feet on the floor, sounds he has memorized without meaning to. Sounds that have become the architecture of what home means to him. He hears her come down the hallway. He hears the automatic comfort in her voice when she says good morning, the particular warmth she reserves for him first thing, before the day has put its weight on her yet. He hears her reach for the mug. Nora. His voice is very quiet. Don't. She stops. She looks at him. She reads his face. She has become extraordinarily good at reading his face these past months, at detecting the frequencies underneath the calm, and something in her expression shifts. Her hand lowers. Her eyes move to the tin of tea on the counter, the one Violet sends every month, the one she brews every morning and calls the thing that steadies her. Her eyes stay on it, for a long time. Jiwoo slides the report across the counter without speaking. She reads it once. Then she sets it down, and she does not say anything, and she does not cry, and she simply stands very still in the middle of their kitchen with her arms wrapped around herself. And what Jiwoo sees on her face is the expression of a woman watching the last safe thing she believed in get taken from her hands. He goes to her. He doesn't say anything either. He just holds her. Violet arrives the following evening. Jiwoo had expected the version of Violet that Nora had occasionally described: composed, older sister certain, the kind of woman who treats her own decisions as already justified before the conversation begins. What comes through the door instead is someone who has clearly not slept, whose hands cannot find stillness, whose eyes go immediately to Nora and then away, as if direct contact is a thing she cannot sustain. She sits. She opens her mouth twice before anything comes out. What comes out is not an excuse. It arrives haltingly, in fragments, and it is this. Kang Dae had approached her 14 months ago. He had known things about Violet's life that Violet had not told anyone: financial difficulties, a custody situation involving her son that was not yet resolved, vulnerabilities that had been researched and assembled into leverage before Violet even understood what was happening. They told her they only needed information. Updates on Nora's state of mind, her stability, her routines. They said it was a business matter, a legal case. They said Nora would not be harmed. I didn't know what was in the tea, Violet says. Her voice has lost all its shape. I swear to you, I didn't know. They gave it to me already blended. They said it was something calming, something that would help her. The room is silent for a long time. Nora is looking at her sister with an expression that is not anger. Exactly, anger would almost be easier. It is something more devastated and more complicated than anger. It is the face of a woman trying to locate, inside a person she has loved her entire life, the place where a decision like this becomes possible. Trying to find the fault line. Trying to understand the architecture of a betrayal this intimate. You watched me fall apart, Nora says finally. Her voice is almost calm. Every Sunday. You called me every Sunday, and you listened to me cry, and you told me I was going to be okay. Violet's face breaks completely. The sound she makes is not elegant, and it is not performed, and it goes on longer than is comfortable, and Jiwoo watches it happen without moving. Because Violet's grief, however real it is, does not live in the same category as what was done to Nora, and he will not allow the room to forget that. When Violet leaves, she stops in the doorway, and what she says is not delivered as a warning so much as a confession. He knows about you. He's known for days. She doesn't turn around. I'm not the threat you need to worry about tonight. Jiwoo is already moving before the door closes. He has 40 minutes before the men arrive. He spends them securing the apartment, positioning Nora in the interior room, and making calls he does not explain to her. What he does not tell her is that 3 of his exit routes have gone quiet in ways that do not feel like coincidence. What he does tell her, standing in the hallway with both her hands in his, is that he loves her, and that she should stay in the back room no matter what she hears, and that he will come back to her. She grips his hands harder and looks at him with steady, terrified eyes and nods. The front door comes off its hinges 11 minutes later. 3 men. Professional. The particular economy of movement that belongs to men who do this for money rather than feeling, which makes them more frightening than anger would. Jiwoo meets the first one in the hallway, the second in the kitchen doorway. The third he does not eliminate. The third he takes to the floor carefully, deliberately, with the specific intention of keeping him conscious. And he holds him there and leans close and asks one question in a voice so quiet and so certain that the man answers it. What the man says stops Jiwoo cold. Kang Dae does not simply know they are here. Kang Dae has known their every move for weeks, not through Violet, whose access was limited and recent, but through a surveillance device hardwired into their apartment's power grid, installed months ago, before Jiwoo even began his investigation. Every conversation, every discovery, every plan. Kangdae had been in this apartment the entire time, listening, waiting, allowing Jiwoo to dismantle the outer network, because the outer network was never the point. Nora was always the objective. Jiwoo had simply become the only variable Kangdae hadn't planned for. Jiwoo pulls Nora from the back room and holds her against him in the ruined quiet of their apartment, and she grabs the front of his jacket with both fists and does not let go. He presses his mouth to the top of her head. He breathes. He thinks. The burner phone on the floor buzzes. He puts it on speaker. He says nothing. Kangdae's voice comes through calm and almost warm. I want you to know that those three weren't the point. The point was to confirm what I already suspected. A pause. You're remarkable, Mr. Kwon. Genuinely. But you've been playing inside my game this entire time. Another pause, shorter. The woman was always the objective. You simply became the only variable I hadn't planned for. The voice drops half a register. Bring her to me, or I'll come for her somewhere you can't protect her. You have until morning. The line dies. Jiwoo stands in the silence, holding the woman he would burn the world down for. And he looks at the wall, and his eyes are absolutely steady. And what lives in them is not fear, and it is not desperation. It is arrival. The expression of a man who has just understood that the only way out of another man's game is to stop playing it entirely and build something worse. They have 12 minutes. Jiwoo knows this because the moment Kangdae's line dies, he is already pulling Nora toward the door, already running the math response time, distance, the specific corrupt precinct Kangdae owns in this district, the speed at which framed evidence travels when money has already changed hands. The men on the floor behind them were not a message. They were a setup. The apartment is the crime scene. Jiwoo's hands are the evidence. And somewhere in a police database updated within the last hour, his name is attached to 3 bodies he put there in self-defense, which will be described in the official record as something considerably different. He does not explain all of this to Nora. He tells her they are leaving now, and she reads the rest in his face and moves. They are 2 blocks away when the first sirens rise behind them. 4 blocks when Nora stops and grabs his arm and turns to face him in the dark of a service alley and says it plainly, without drama, the way she says every true thing that he should go, that he should leave her somewhere and save himself, that she is tired, Jiwoo. She is so tired, and she will not be the reason the man who saved her life loses his. Her voice does not shake when she says it, and that is somehow the most devastating version of it. The version that sounds like a decision she has already made. Jiwoo looks at her for a long moment. Then he cups her face in both hands, his thumbs at her jaw the way they were on the bedroom floor the night this began, and he says very quietly, I am not leaving you in this alley. I am not leaving you anywhere. I am going to put you somewhere safe, and then I am going to end this. When I come back, the monsters will be gone. Every single one. He holds her eyes until she nods, until the decision she made dissolves back into the trust he has spent months earning. He puts her in the care of Song Ji-yeon, a former intelligence analyst who lives off 3 different grids simultaneously and opens her door at 1 in the morning without surprise. Ji-yeon puts a hand on Nora's shoulder and says, in careful English, You are safe here. Jiwoo watches Nora cross that threshold. He watches the door close. He stands in the hallway for 3 seconds, allowing himself to feel the full weight of what he is about to walk toward. Then he turns and moves toward Kangdae's building with his hands loose at his sides and his face completely empty. Inside Ji-yeon's apartment, Nora does not sleep. She sits on the couch with her knees pulled to her chest, and she watches the city through the window the way you watch something you are not sure will still be there when you look away. Ji-yeon brings her tea, real tea, plain and unadorned, nothing in it but leaves and water, and sits beside her without speaking, which is exactly the right thing. Nora wraps both hands around the mug and holds it without drinking. She thinks about a bedroom floor. She thinks about a kitchen counter and a laboratory report sliding toward her across the tile. She thinks about her sister's face breaking in their living room. She thinks about Jiwoo's hands on her face in the alley, the absolute certainty in his voice. The way he looked at her like leaving was simply not a category of thing that existed for him. She does not pray exactly, but she sits with the window and she holds the mug and she waits for him to come back. The penthouse occupies the top 2 floors of a tower in Gangnam with its own security force and 4 rotating guards on the roof. Jiwoo goes in through the building's data infrastructure first remotely. Spending 40 minutes, he does not have dismantling the internal camera network and replacing the live feed with a looped recording. He enters through a service corridor on the 31st floor. He moves upward. The guards he encounters, he removes quietly, one by one, with the methodical calm of a man who is not angry, which is somehow more frightening than anger would be. By the time he reaches the penthouse door, the security architecture of Kangdae's sanctuary has been reduced to a single locked entrance and whatever waits behind it. He opens it and goes in. Kangdae is at the dining table. Not a weapon, not guards. A man seated before a set table with a glass of wine at his right hand and the posture of someone who has been waiting and found the waiting agreeable. He looks at Jiwoo the way a collector looks at a piece he has finally acquired. He gestures at the chair across from him. Jiwoo does not sit. Kangdae reaches into his jacket and produces a small black device and sets it beside his wine glass without ceremony. He explains it without being asked a dead man's switch, biometric, tied to his pulse. If his heartbeat stops transmitting, a signal goes to 7 phones within 4 seconds. Each phone holds 1 instruction and 1 location, Nora's location. He delivers this information with the calm of a man who has never occupied a room where the exit wasn't already his. Jiwoo says nothing. He reaches into his own pocket and sets his phone on the table, screen facing up, and slides it across. Kangdae looks at it. The account figures on the screen take a moment to resolve. The smile doesn't fall immediately, it erodes, slowly, as the numbers register. Every reserve, every holding, every shell company and offshore instrument, liquidated or frozen by automated commands Jiwoo set running before he entered this building. The dead man's switch can still transmit. But the 7 men holding those phones have not been paid in 6 minutes. And their loyalty was always an arrangement of money rather than conviction. And while Kangdae is still understanding this, the whistleblowing network receives its upload. 8 names, 8 destroyed families, 8 lives. Every file, every financial record, every communication delivered simultaneously to journalists, international human rights monitors, and the 3 prosecutors in Seoul who are not owned by anyone Kangdae can now afford. The composed man at the table is gone between one breath and the next. What replaces him leans forward with his jaw tight and his eyes stripped of every layer that wealth had placed over them, and he says it with the specific precision of a man reaching for the only weapon he has left. "You think you've done something here." His voice is very controlled. "You think she gets to be whole now." A pause, calculated and deliberate. "Every nightmare she has for the rest of her life is still mine, Mr. Kwan. I built those. You can't hack into what I've already put inside her head. She'll be screaming in her sleep when you're both old." He leans back. "You didn't save her. You just changed who's haunting her." The room is silent. Jiwoo looks at him for a long moment. Then he walks around the table and he forces Kangdae to look at the phone screen, not the accounts, but the photographs. The Hainyo diver, the factory owner, the architect. Nora's face from a security camera the night she stepped in front of his men for a stranger on a coastal road. Her expression, not heroic, but simply certain. The face of a person who saw something wrong and could not walk past it. "Look at them," Jiwoo says, the same voice he uses to bring Nora back from nightmares. "Look at every single one of them." He makes certain Kangdae looks. Then he ensures Kangdae will never threaten anyone's sleep again. At Ji-yeon's window, Nora watches the sky begin its slow transition at the edges. She has not moved from the couch. The tea went cold an hour ago. Ji-yeon fell asleep in the chair across from her sometime after 3, and Nora did not wake her. She sits in the quiet of someone else's apartment in the dark before dawn, and she holds herself very still, and she breathes. Just that, just breathing in a room where nothing is trying to hurt her. Practicing what it feels like. Trying to remember if it was always this simple, or if simple is something you have to relearn after it's been taken. The door opens at 3:58. She is across the room before she is conscious of moving. He looks like what he is, a man who has done something irreversible and is carrying it without apology. His knuckles are split. There is a cut above his left eye. She takes his face in both hands and looks at him the way he has looked at her so many times in the dark with her whole self, nothing withheld, and what she sees in his eyes is not the cold thing that left with him. That door is closed. What is there now is simply him. The version she fell in love with returned. Is it over? She asks. It's over, he says. She pulls him close and holds him with everything she has, and he wraps both arms around her, and they stand in the doorway of a borrowed apartment in the hour before dawn, and the weight of the past year moves through him and out the other side. You need to know how this ends. Not in the penthouse, not in the alley. This is how it ends. Several months later, a coastal town 3 hours south of Seoul, small enough that strangers become known within a week. An apartment with windows that face the water. Jiwoo is at the stove, making doenjang-jiga, and the kitchen smells like fermented soybean and sesame oil, and the particular warmth of a home that is being inhabited rather than endured. Nora's hands appear around his waist from behind. He feels her press her face between his shoulder blades. Her hands carry a faint tremor. Some mornings still a remnant the doctor says will continue fading, but this morning they are steady against his stomach, and he covers them with his own without turning around. I slept, she says. Her voice still carries the rough edge of recent waking. He goes still, just for a moment. Tell me. No nightmare, Nora says quietly. I just slept, the whole night. I slept, Jiwoo. He turns from the stove and holds her face in both hands and looks at her in the morning light coming off the water. And what moves through his expression is not relief exactly. It is something larger and less nameable than relief. The expression of a man who went to the absolute end of himself for another person and found that she was worth every inch of that distance and would be worth it again. She smiles at him, unhurried, unafraid. Outside, the sea moves the way it always has, indifferent to what it outlasts. Inside this kitchen, in this light, in this life, they have rebuilt from the wreckage of everything that was done to her. Nora is still here. She is whole in the ways that matter. The scars exist, and they have made a home alongside them, and chosen not to let the scars be the loudest thing in the room. That night, she slept beside him until morning. She never screamed his name again.